You know, Charles Lee Ray being responsible and being like the troop leader for a group of young men at a boys' home just seems like a horrific idea. Hello, everyone. Terrence here with Hollywood Already Did It. If you haven't already, go ahead, like, share, subscribe to the channel, ring that bell below. Anytime we have something, you will be among the first to know. Episode 4, and we're having some fun. This is probably by far my favorite episode of Chucky. This series is a lot of fucking fun. It's a blast to be a part of this and see this world, this wide web that Don Mancini is sort of creating and starting to put Easter eggs of the past in this as well. It's a fun ride. This episode picks up right after the last episode. It's called Just Let Go. Carnage ensues. We get a sort of a slow tracking shot to show all the burn victims and all the burn folks that have kind of existed at that party that have like minor burns, third degree burns. Oliver, rest in peace. And we have to see sort of this through the eyes of Jake. Jake's going through the hospital, and like I said in the last episode, we could start to see that turn when he went to the graveside and saw his mother's grave, that he was starting to realize that there was some humanity, and he may not quite be the killer that Chucky has sort of groomed and envisioned him to be. And he goes and sees all the carnage, and he's having a change of heart. Some of the folks he doesn't know. Some of them are people who have laughed at him before. But when he gets to Devin, the person he cares about, and he even sees Caroline, Lexi's little sister, that's when he starts saying, okay, maybe Chucky has kind of gone too far on the deep end to remove Lexi off the board. And then Lexi comes in, and while he's watching Caroline, and he sees, and she informs him that she knows that Chucky is alive and that Chucky was trying to kill him. And she asks, does does Jake know? And this is where this gets weird because she doesn't initially get upset, which is bizarre. I don't know what track record or train of thought she was using because she asks, "Hey, Jake, did you know that Chucky killed your father?" And he's like, "Yeah, I had an idea. I don't know how." And immediately at that point in time, Lexi should have been like, "Hold on, motherfucker! You put Jake in my house. You put a known killer with me." But she didn't freak out then. She eventually got those slow breadcrumbs and that slow wheel turning, and she was like, "Wait, what happened?" And it's pretty much Jake had to tell her, "Hey, I was trying to kill you." And then she flipped off and kind of got pissed and was like, "I'm gonna go tell everybody. How could you do this? All of this stuff." And Jake kind of just lays it out there, like, "Yo, if you go around shouting from the rooftop that the killer doll tried to murder you, you're gonna seem crazy, and then you're gonna seem crazy." Because no one else believes you, because I'm gonna deny it and all this stuff. So she kind of has to keep it quiet, but she's also like, "We're not friends. F you. You tried to murder me." So at the top of the episode, they sort of split. Jake's kind of just sitting in the hallway watching, and then Lexi goes to see about her sister Caroline. It's never shown that Chucky is at the hospital, but we do get a lot of camera shots that look like they're at Chucky's angle. But it is clear by the rest of what happens in this episode that he may not have been there because there's no way that he can really run from one place to the other with his little legs getting across town unless he's hitching a ride in someone's car. It just doesn't seem like so. I just think those shots are tracking to make us believe that he's there when he's not, which is well done. It's great horror, but he wasn't in the room. Devin is informed by his mother, Detective Evans, that Oliver, because it is assumed by everybody that Oliver died in the fire, like he was burned, and that's how they found his body, but he was stabbed, per Detective Evans, several times before being burned up. And so he lets them know, and then she starts questioning about Jake and Chucky, and kind of like, "Do you know where Jake's at? Do you know where Chucky's at?" This is leading me to believe what I said at the very beginning of all of this: how some people who may have been a part of this town should have some type of awareness of Chucky. And so I think the wheels are starting to turn that maybe this is a little bit more. And she's like, "Well, Jake may not have been there, but was the doll there?" And she's starting to think that maybe two and two go together, but she doesn't quite have enough to have all the facts. This is a trope of all horror movies and shows, but police are typically either a need so many facts to make a push, or they're the last ones to kind of get in on, "Oh, there's a killer doll." And I feel like that's going to be the thread that we get here. She's going to be the last one there. But in that, Devin goes to Jake and kind of lets him know that, hey, my mom's watching you. But where was your? My mom's watching you. I believe you. I'm glad you weren't at the party. You know, I wanted you there. I'm glad you're not. They have a bit of a connection. But he's also letting him know, like, my mom's watching you, and oddly has questions about the doll. That leads him as a person, as a horror podcast, which is also something that I was always questioning. If he's a horror podcast and he's in this world, he should have a little bit more cognizance of this, and he should already be aware of Chucky. But he goes and Googles Chucky or killer doll, killer good guy doll, and he gets some facts and gets Chucky, gets to Charles. He gets that long way of Charles Lee Ray, which is fun spot where we get a couple of Easter eggs where we see Tiffany Valentine and we see Nina. So they're starting to put Easter eggs and kind of bridge everything together in this world of Chucky. While that's happening at the hospital, the parents are there. Junior's parents are there, trying to make sure that he's good. He's going to have some issues breathing, so he can't run track for a little bit. Pisses off Papa. And then Caroline and Lexi's parents are there. They have already laid into Lexi, like saying, this is your fault. You got people murdered. You got our house on fire, which is a national landmark. You've effed everything up. And they lay into her, and then they go and then start having this beratement back and forth with Junior's parents about who said, she said, who did what, who's the worst parent. I'm a worse parent than you are. You're the worst parent of them all. And punches are thrown. And Detective Evans is there to sort of break it all up and kind of let them know that, hey, you guys are worried about the fire, but someone died. Someone was murdered in this. Oliver was stabbed, and they all kind of break apart. And she's like, let them know, like, you and your children, I'm going to need access to all of them because I'm going to have some questions to ask. What's interesting here? It's not blatant, but it's really the only way that this can kind of go to make it all make sense. I have to believe that the way that he didn't want to look at them and the way that he knew a little bit too much information about Junior's dad than he should have. I feel like Junior's mom and Lexi and Caroline's dad are the ones that are having an affair with each other. Just the body language and the way that that's all played, I feel like they're the ones. I could be wrong, but that's just the way that that read to me. And I feel like we were going to learn that those two are the ones that are hooking up. Mainly because he's a stay-at-home dad, and so that way the time that he has at home while she's off doing her mayoral stuff and being super powerful and not paying enough attention to him, and vice versa on the other side, I feel like they might have some commonality when it all comes together. But that's just how my brain works, and I think that's where they're going. Last thing that really takes place in the hospital before we move off is that Lexi and Jake kind of have a come to Jesus together in a pact. It's like, yeah, you're right, nobody else is going to believe me. And I think if I'm going to believe in anyone, it's going to be you. This doesn't mean we're friends, but let's call it a truce, a pact to kind of go see if we can find where Chucky is, to kind of see if he is dead or if he is gone, and that we can kind of move on with the next part of our life. In the midst of all this, we have a flashback sequence of this episode, which has sort of been a key for all of these episodes. This one deals with Charles Lee Ray being a wonderful camp counselor, big brother to these kids at a Big Brother shelter. After the events of the last episode in the past, where he killed his parents, they move him to boys' homes after boys' home. He's in his boys' home and he's being his super genuine self and reading books, but also being himself where he's cursing, and the kids sort of adopt that mentality from him. There is a janitor that kind of gets on the bad side of Charles, and on one day where they're playing like Hook and Peter Pan, Charles Lee leads the three boys that he's sort of shepherding into the woods, and they find a janitor who has been cut up and disfigured with a hook hand and say, hey, there's Captain Hook. A couple of the kids freak out and they run away. One of them does not, which lays an Easter egg for those fans of Child's Play 1. In the first Child's Play, there's an accomplice that Charles Lee Ray has named Eddie Caputo. So the kid that kind of sticks around and falls in love and adopts some of the ways that Charles Lee does. This is where that interaction or that connection first happens. So we find out in the last part of the flashback sequence of this episode that young man who he gives that hand that he took off for the hook, he gives that to him, and as he ventures off to do his next thing, he's sort of created a murderer. And it seems to be the norm for Charles to sort of want to create a ward. And he got that with Eddie, even though we know what the fate of with Eddie once we get to with Child's Play. But he wants that with Jake. And so that sort of leads to the next sequence where Jake and Lexi make it back to the burned up house. They're kind of doing some triage, some sleeper cell, some splinter cell type of sneaking into the house. And they do so, they get in. And at this moment, they start to sort of have a better understanding of each other. They are both probably on different sides of the spectrum, but both dealing with depression and anxiety. Jake has to take some pills, and Lexi sees it and kind of asks him which one of those are you, and he's like both. And you could tell that she's starting to kind of realize that he keeps asking if she's okay. And she's like, "Why do you keep asking me that?" She starts crying and freaking out, going up the stairs. They have an emotional moment together, and then and it's a weird thing that the bully would do, but she's saying, "I didn't really get so bad that you wanted to kill me." And he's like, "Why don't you just tell me?" And he's like, "You wouldn't have listened. It wouldn't have been a thing." This is one of those things where it's good when the bully and the bully, I don't think that's the word, but we're going to try it today, get to have an interaction with each other, and sort of just let all the BS around. Because a lot of times this happens because there's a group of people that are gassing each other up or gassing the bully up so they continue the downpour to punch down. All that's gone stripped away. It's just the two of them having this conversation, and they are getting into the muck of it a little bit, and it riles Jake up, and he gets angry, and he's saying like, "You pushed me to this. You were the one who got me to be this bad. And yes, I didn't want to be a murderer. I didn't want to go kill. I just wanted to kill you." And he inadvertently, on purpose, pushes Lexi off the railing that's already sort of debris out and broken up because of the fire, and she's hanging on by a thread, hanging on by a hand. We had not seen Chucky in all of this episode, and then we hear that laugh. And we get, look, when they disfigure Chucky, man, they disfigure the shit out of him, and he looks amazing with a half-burned face. It looks terrifying, and it's fantastic, and I wish that I could have a version of that dead doll, because it's pretty gruesome and fantastic to look at the same time. But he's been at the house the whole time, and he's just been waiting. And he sees Lexi hanging on by a thread, and he just starts going on this thing to Jake, like, "Hey, this is your chance. This is your shot. You got it right where you want her. Just let go." The part that I love is like he calls her. It's like this will just be one less vicious Karen in training wheels. Look, no matter who he's killing or how he's having a ball with it, he's having a blast. Charles Lee Ray has some of the best one-liners. Brad Dourif, I can imagine in that booth just having a field day. But Jake gets a change of heart, and he's like, "I'm not like you. I'm not a killer." And he pulls him up, which is some of, I think, what we had seen before, in the previous episode when he's sort of had that moment where I can't do this. I'm not that type of person. So he pulls her back up. Chucky's just trying to stab her while he's like, "Fine, then I'll just kill her." He's trying to stab her while he's pulling her up, but he can't get her. And while that's happening, you start hearing police, like if there's an officer outside, because there's been an officer on the side of the house the whole time. And then Chucky has to revert back to his sitting mode. And then the kids end up in the police car with them. We then go to the hospital again, where the doll has been taken there. The doll is going to go to Detective Evans. That's the plan. That's why the hospital is where they sort of end up, as opposed to like taking them to the actual police station. At the hospital, they are trying to find out where, because the cop goes in with Chucky first before they get out the car, and they are trying to figure out where Chucky's been placed. They can't find him. This guard has a munchies issue, so he's trying to like go to a vending machine, get munchies, do his thing there. And the kids are kind of just going around searching. While this is happening, Devin is already searching, kind of got his information, so he comes back to tell Lexi, like, "Hey Lexi, this is gonna sound bananas, but there was this whole thing where this serial killer named Charles Lee Ray put his soul and essence inside of a killer doll. It's gonna sound nuts." It's like, nah, I believe you, because I think that happened. I've seen it, seen the real stuff. And so they go kind of try to go find Jake to kind of get information about that. But while that's happening, Chucky winds up in the room with Caroline on a ventilator, by conveniently placed by both suites where the officer in question can just eat all the food that was supposed to be there for Caroline, which is I kind of want him to die anyway. And then next to hospital, like syringes and knives and a lot of cutting tools. Basically, a smorgasbord, if you would, for Chucky. Uh, and after a minute of getting crumbs on him and all kinds of stuff and hearing him chew and smack, but after a few moments, Cuddy throws a cutting blade right into the spine and nails it, pinpoint, bullseye, where he loses all feeling in his body. He can't move. And then he falls to the ground and it inserts even further, basically just severing the spine. And then Chucky goes to work because he knows at that point there's nobody else hearing him. The room's got a fiberglass, so he can't hear anything or anything that anybody's talking. They can't hear him, and he just starts playing. He gets the syringe and stabs him once, and then he gets more and triples, and he just goes to town. Does it over and over and over again to the point where the vessels in the heart arteries kind of clog and blood starts coming through his eyes and ears and fingernails. It's just a pool of blood. He's like, man, I love being at a hospital because and he's not wrong. He's getting a bunch of toys that he gets to play with, and blood can kind of just come out of whichever way. He's having a field day there. So right before the final sequence of this episode, Detective Evans is talking to Jake and kind of like interrogating him and saying like, where were you? Who's your dial? Where's your dial? Kind of getting in the grill because she has sort of put everything together. And it seems like Jake is just about to like break down like, all right, it's Chucky. Chucky pulls the plug on Caroline's bed, and there's like a cold, I think it's cold white, when it just goes flat, and someone who is on a ventilator croaks out. And so everybody that's at the hospital rushes there. Parents are there, Junior's parents are there, I believe, the three kids, Devin, Jake and Lexi, and Detective Evans. And so for the first part of this, they're all just paying attention to Caroline. No one has seen that there's a dead body next to the side of her bed yet. They're trying to do everything humanly possible, and all of a sudden they see that, oh crap, the bed's unplugged. So they plug it back in, and everything seems fine. But then one of the nurses sees the blood sort of spilling out. Blood's coming all over the place. Everybody's freaking out. We get a nice old school horrific horror queen scream from Caroline and Lexi's mom. And the Detective Evans comes around and is looking very confused about what's happening in life. Meanwhile, Chucky is sitting there, half face burned. The three kids acknowledge, and they look at him and like they know he's there, and he flips them off, gives them the bird, and that's how we end the episode. Hands down, for me, my favorite because it did three things. One, it established timeline and established history, and we can get kind of an Easter egg with Caputo and Charles Lee Ray, kind of just showing him grow up too. It gave me a lot of character moments. I liked the whole essence of putting the two enemies, Jake and Lexi, together and kind of had to form a true sort of pact to figure out what is going on. And their heart to heart and him saving her, I think, will now get him more to be on her side. She's not going to be as brutal to him as she was. And that helps. And three, it's violent. You get Chucky in his element. You get Chucky is at his best, I think, when he's been disfigured or disformed. That Bride of Chucky era when he's got like the stitches all over. It's fun because you can play with the design every now and then. It looks like, well, obviously, with some of the stuff we're going to get in future episodes, another good guy dial that's a little more clean and put together is going to get put back on the ground. But for now, I would love an episode or two where it's just half burnt Chucky because he's an interesting character to look at. But a fun episode. I am fully in. Like, these are some episodes that make me smile. I wish I could do these a half a day sooner. Work sort of has been getting in the way, but I am having a blast with this. What are you thinking so far of the Chucky series, and what did you think about this episode? Just let it go. Go ahead and leave your thoughts in the comments below. If you haven't already, you can follow us on Twitter at HollywoodADI, or you can hit us up on email at HollywoodAlreadyDidIt@gmail.com. We also have a podcast with the same name that's on Google Podcasts, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, anywhere that plays podcasts. We're there. And like always, I got my ticket. You got yours.